Today we're going to talk about ancient Rome and the early Christians. So, the Roman Republic. According to myth, legend, Romulus and Remus, two twin sons, and they were sons of the Roman god Mars. There were plots afoot, basically, that the other gods wanted to harm the boys, so to protect them, their mother Rhea sent them afloat in a basket down the Tiber River. They were found by a female wolf, a she-wolf, who basically fed them and took care of them and raised the kids. And there's a caption there. The legend of Romulus and Remus would eventually continue, and as you see, Shepherd adopted the boys and continued to raise them. As the twins grew older, they decided they didn't want to tend sheep, of course. They wanted to do something greater. So they built a city along the banks of the Tiber River. However, they disagreed on where the river should be, or where the town should be located on the river. And of course, they both wanted to be king. So they quarreled, and in a fit of rage, they fought, and in a bit of rage, Romulus killed Remus. And so, of course, Romulus took his city to be the city that was going to be, the successful city of Palatine Hill, and that would be Rome. So in reality, and guys, that's a myth. Every civilization we've talked about has a creation myth. So even the U.S. has a couple of myths that, how we don't really have a creation myth. We mythologize two people. That would be George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. However, in reality, Rome was built by the Latin people between 1000 BC and 500 BC. The city was founded along the Tiber River on the Italian peninsula in the center of the Mediterranean Sea. So it's in the centrally located on the Italian boot, but it's also centrally located in the Mediterranean River. The site of Rome was chosen for its fertile soil and a strategic location. So the land of Rome was built on several The land that Rome was built on had several advantages. The city was built on 7 hills, making it difficult to attack. The location on the Tiber River and the Mediterranean Sea meant that people could easily conduct trade throughout the region. 2 other groups also lived on the Italian peninsula you need to know about: the Etruscans and the Greeks. So what you need to know is that the land of the Romans actually has 3 ethnic groups in its early days, and that would be Etruscans, Latins, and Greeks. Okay, so both the Greeks and the Etruscans have strong influences on the development of Rome. All 3 groups compete for control in the region at some point in time. After 600 BC, the Etruscan kings take control of Rome, and they rule over the Latins, the Romans. The Etruscan kings order temples of public centers to be built, including the Forum, which is a lot like the Greek Agora. As you see, it's the center for Roman politics, also the center for markets, trade. Rome becomes a large, prosperous, commercial, active city. The fall of the Etruscans would be the last Etruscan king. His name was Tarquin, and he uses violence, murder, and terrorism to maintain control over Rome. The Romans resented the Etruscans. According to legend, Tarquin allowed his son to rape a Roman woman, and as you see, this enrages the Romans, and they overthrow the Etruscan king in 509 BC, and the Romans vowed to never be ruled by a king again. Good for about 1500 years. So they end up setting up a republic. Following the expulsion of the Etruscans, the Roman people create a republic, from the Latin word that means res publica, or public works. In this system, Roman citizens were allowed to elect the leaders of their government. Only freeborn males were considered citizens. So you have 2 groups in Roman Roman culture, Roman civilization here. You have the patricians and the plebeians. These two groups, of course, will struggle for power in the new republic. The patricians and the plebeians, as you see, patricians were wealthy landowning class that held most power, made up of a very small portion of the population. Okay, so plebeians are going to be the common people, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Most people fell into this class. So here we go. Well, let's see here. Go back. As you see, patricians, aristocratic families, elected officials within themselves, and they controlled every aspect of society. Plebeians, common people, and they challenged patricians for more rights. So what's going to happen in the early days of the Roman Republic? Patricians are the only ones that are going to be able to hold office. Plebeians can't hold office. In time, plebeians are going to win more rights, and in time, plebeians are going to be able to be elected to office. These offices are called tribunes, and tribunes protected the rights of the common people from unfair practices of the patricians. Laws at this time were unwritten, so people start to develop what was called the 12 tables, and this becomes written. This becomes the basis for written law, or this becomes the written law. 12 tables, as you see, basis for law in Rome, and it protected all citizens, including the plebeians, and they were written. So here's kind of how the Roman government worked. You had the consuls. These would be 2 consuls elected, and they served a 1-year term. They're the 2 chief executives, and they're commanders of the army. So then you have the Senate. The Senate's a body of 300 members who advised all the elected officials. They controlled the public finances, and they handled all foreign relations. The Senate, when you were appointed to the Senate, it was a lifetime appointment. So you could serve the rest of your life in there. The point with the Senate is that they actually held government together because of their experience. So the consuls would use the Senate as an advisory board to counsel them on how to handle an issue. Because keep in mind, the consuls only were elected for 1 year, and they only served a 1-year term. So as you see, you have magistrates. These are people who put laws into practice. They governed in the name of the Senate and the people. They acted as priests, and these people were elected as well. Various popular assemblies, all citizens vote on laws and elected officials, and so you had this going on as well. So Roman government had 3 parts. First, consuls. Consuls were like kings. They led, one led the government, the other led the army. They could veto each other's decisions. So in other words, you go nowhere. And this actually graph over here, if you look, you had your 2 consuls, 1 plebeian, over time 1 plebeian, 1 patrician, and then you had senators, 10 tribunes, and then you had the all citizen assembly. So the word veto comes from Rome, comes from Latin. It means I forbid it. The United States, the president has the veto power over the Senate. And over the House, really. It means I forbid it. So the second part of the Roman government was the Senate. The members were elected by the people. However, most senators were patricians. Senators passed laws and also controlled the treasury or the money. The Senate is the most powerful group in the government of the Roman Republic, and like I said, they served a lifetime election. So you had the citizen assemblies. This is any citizen could belong to an assembly, and they were elected tribunes and made laws and applied to the common man. Dictators. Dictators were leaders appointed in times of crisis. They were chosen by the 2 consuls and then approved by the Senate. Dictators had absolute power to make laws and control the army. Their power would only last for 6 months. So dictators would nominate them, and this would typically be for a crisis like an invasion or an economic crisis or something like that. You'd put a dictator in charge, and they took care of that crisis so the consuls could work on the rest of government. So the story of Cincinnatus, he was a humble farmer, but he held high regard. He's held in high regard by the Roman citizens. Rome was threatened by an invading force. The people called upon Cincinnatus to be their dictator, so the councils approved it, or the councils nominated him, the Senate approved him. Cincinnatus put down his plow and he picked up his sword and he led the army for about, I think, 15 days. He defeated the enemy and he immediately resigned his position as dictator, returned to his farm, and he's considered to this day to be a Roman hero. Hence, we name one of our cities in America after him, Cincinnati. So, do we have an American Cincinnatus? You could look at George Washington and say he would be very close. As you see, because he too held his command only until the British defeat, or only until we defeated the British at that time, when he could have chosen to exercise great political power. Instead, he returned as soon as he could to cultivating his lands on his farm. He would be called again to be president of the United States, but then he also turns down a third term as office, and he just retires after 2 terms. Roman military. As you see, Romans placed great value on their military. All landowning citizens were required to serve in the military. Some political positions even required 10 years of military service. Roman soldiers were organized into large military units known as legions. Therefore, soldiers were known as legionnaires. So in the legions, as you see, they're based off of the infamous Greek phalanx. However, legions were smaller and therefore could maneuver much quicker and much easier, usually around 5,000. Units would usually be broken down even further into groups of 60 to 120. So keep in mind, centurions were mid-ranking officers in charge of groups of 100 soldiers within the legions, and that would be called a century. Okay, so they called groups of 100 soldiers centuries, and then centurions were the leaders of those centuries. So in the 4th century BC, Rome began to expand. The Romans defeated the Etruscans in the north and the Greeks in the south. Within 150 years had captured almost all of Italy. And as you see, Rome threatened the conquered people justly. Okay, or excuse me, Rome treated the conquered people justly. They even allowed some of the conquered peoples to enjoy benefits of citizenship. So, Greece sought an alliance with Rome for protection. Together, Greeks and Romans defeated Macedonia and Persia. As you see, Greece and the Roman province, or Greece became a Roman province. The Romans adopted Greek culture as well. So here's some maps on their expansion. And if you watch, let's see here, if you watch this video here, it talks about the development of Rome.